Hello from Halifax. This is Jo with Jo to the World Creations, and today we're going to be making my moss stitch scarf crochet pattern. I'm really excited to share this crochet scarf pattern with you, and we're going to be getting right to the video tutorial. Everything you need to know about this pattern is available entirely for free on my website, or you can purchase the ad-free print-ready PDF, and there are links to both in the description below this video. Before we begin, a quick tip that whenever I'm making anything with fringe or tassels, I always cut my strands first. And I do that when the skein is still relatively full, so the strands are nice and naturally straight. I find that when I wait until the end of the project, and if I'm using the end of a skein, the strands are quite bent, and I find them really hard to get straight once they're in the fringe or tassels. So that's my tip, and feel free to jump ahead to make the strands first and then come back and start the pattern. We're going to start with an eye hook and whatever yarn you'd like to use for color A. I'll be using this fern color for color A. We're going to start by making a slip knot, but before we do that, we want to ensure that you leave an approximate 9-inch starting tail. So make your slip knot, make a loop, pull the yarn through the loop, pull tight, and just make sure that starting end is at least 9 inches long. Put your loop on your hook and pull tight. Now we're going to make a number of starting chains. For the regular size, you're going to chain 281. For the large size, chain 317. And all the details for both sizes are in the written instructions. With your starting chains now made, we're going to begin row 1. For row 1, we are going to be working into the back ridge loops, whereas if you twist your work, these are the bumps all along the back. We're going to be working into them all across the row. We're going to start by working into the second chain from the hook, and we're going to rotate our chains and work into the second back ridge loop, which is the second back bump from the hook. And into that back ridge loop, we're going to slip stitch very loosely. Insert your hook into the back bump, pull the yarn through and pull that yarn through the loop on your hook, and that creates our first loose slip stitch. And we're going to slip stitch loosely all the way across, always working into the back ridge loops, inserting your hook into the back bump and then slip stitch loosely. You go ahead and make slip stitches in each chain all the way across, then come back to the video. I have one last chain to slip stitch into. Nothing special happens, just showing we're still working into the back ridge loop of that last chain, not working into the slip knot. So into this last back ridge loop, slip stitch loosely. The written instructions includes the exact number of stitches you should have. We are now going to begin row 2, and we are going to continue using our eye hook, and we're going to continue using the same color A. To start row 2, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to turn our work. We are going to skip the first stitch. This is the stitch that's attached to that chain 2 that we just made, and we're going to skip that. What we're going to be doing across the whole row is we are going to single crochet in the next stitch, and we're going to be working under both loops, single crochet normally in the next stitch. Then we're going to chain one and then skip the next stitch. Let's do that together. So skip the first stitch. In the next stitch, we're going to single crochet. So insert your hook under both loops. Yarn over, bring that yarn through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and bring the yarn through those 2 loops on your hook. Now we're going to chain one, and we're going to skip the next stitch. And we begin that repeat all over again. In the next stitch, we're going to single crochet. So insert your hook under both loops and single crochet. And we're going to do this all the way across. Chain one, skip the next stitch. In the next stitch, single crochet. You're going to do that all the way across until you have 1 stitch left. So I'm almost near the end of my row here, so I'll just keep going. So single crocheted, chain one, skip the next stitch, in the next stitch, single crochet. And this can be a little tight because we're working into slip stitches, and even though we tried to make them loose, it still can be a little tight. So just take your time. So after your last chain one, you will have 2 stitches left, and according to the repeat, we skip the next stitch. So we are going to be working into the very last stitch, and into this stitch, we are going to single crochet, and we're going to change colors on this last stitch. Here's how we do it. With our current color, so still color A, we're going to insert our hook into this last stitch and begin our single crochet stitch. We are going to yarn over and pull that yarn through that last stitch so we have 2 loops on our hook. Now I'm just going to place this down and get out my color B. For color B, I'm using this deep forest color. Now, one thing that's really important is that when you attach your new color, you want to leave at least a 9-inch starting tail. So making sure you have at least 9 inches, we are now going to put the new color on our hook, and then we're going to pull it through the 2 loops of our old color. Now we are going to fasten off color A, and we're going to leave a 9-inch tail. So making sure you leave a nice long tail, get your scissors and cut. That now completes row 2. Once again, the written instructions has the exact number of stitches that you should have in this row for whatever size you're making. A quick note about when you're counting your stitches, you are only going to count the single crochet stitches that you made in this row. You are not going to count any of the chains that we made, whether it's the chain 2 we made at the start or the chain 1. We don't count the spaces or skip stitch, just count the number of single crochet stitches you have in the row. Now we are going to change hooks. We are going to move up to a J hook, and we're going to continue using this J hook for the rest of the pattern. With our J hook, we're going to insert our J hook into the loop of color B and tighten everything up, and this part can get a little loose. Whenever we change colors, you might find it quite loose. As you work, you can tighten things up, but I found that it really gets tightened once we do the tassels or fringe at the end. So don't worry too much if it's a little loose where you've changed colors. So I've got our J hook. We are now working with color B, and we are going to start row 3. To start row 3, we are going to chain 2, and we're going to turn. The first place we're going to work into is this chain 1 space. This is the first chain 1 space in the row, and it is between the last 2 single crochet stitches we made in the previous row under a chain 1. So we're going to insert our hook into this space, and then we're going to single crochet. So insert your hook into the first chain 1 space and single crochet. Now we're going to be repeating the following steps all the way across. We are going to chain 1 into the next chain 1 space. So the next chain 1 space is a space between the next 2 single crochet stitches under a chain 1, and into this space we are going to single crochet. Insert your hook into the next chain 1 space and single crochet. And we're going to repeat this all the way across. Chain 1, we're going to work into the next chain 1 space, which is this space between the next 2 single crochet stitches. Insert your hook into this chain 1 space and single crochet. And you're going to do this all the way across until the final space. So chain 1, in the next chain 1 space, single crochet. So your last step before that final space is a chain 1. So make sure you chain 1 before we work into the final space. The final space is a chain 2 space. It's between this single crochet stitch here and the chain 2 that we made to start the previous round. And this is the space that can be the trickiest to see. It's quite tight, but you can see very clearly a single crochet stitch here, and then there's the chain 2. We're going to insert our hook into this chain 2 space and single crochet. Just make sure you've made a chain 1 before we make our final single crochet stitch. So I've made my chain 1, working into the last space, which is a chain 2 space, single crochet. Now we're going to start row 4. We are still going to work with color B, so the same color we've just used in row 3, and we're once again using our J hook for the rest of the pattern. To start row 4, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to turn our work. Row 4 is almost exactly the same as row 3. The only thing that's different is that in that last space, we're going to change colors. But let's do this together all the way across the row. We're going to start by working in the first chain 1 space. This is the space here between the first 2 single crochet stitches, and into this chain 1 space we're going to single crochet. So I've made my chain 2, I've turned my work, and now into this first chain 1 space, single crochet. Now we're going to repeat the following all the way across until the final space. Chain 1, in the next chain 1 space, single crochet. Chain 1, in the next chain 1 space. Feel free to pull your work apart a little bit just so you can clearly see the space that you need to work into. It's between the 2 single crochets, and under a chain 1 we're going to single crochet. You're going to do that all the way across. Chain 1, in the next chain 1 space, single crochet. And then the final step in the row is a chain 1, And then we're going to single crochet into this chain 2 space, which is the last space in the row, between the last single crochet stitch and the chain 2 that we made to start the previous row. And it's tight, but there really is a space in here, and that's where we're going to work into. And in this step here, we're going to change colors. So I've chained 1 into this last chain 2 space. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. So I have 2 loops of color B currently on my hook. Now I'm going to pick up color A again, and once again we're always going to leave a 9-inch starting tail whenever we join colors or whenever we fasten off, or when I should say we change colors, attach colors. When we add this color back on, we just want to make sure that you're leaving a nice long 9-inch starting tail. So I'm going to put color A on my hook, and now I'm going to pull it through the 2 loops that I had on my hook of color B to change colors. Now I'm going to fasten off color B, once again leaving a 9-inch tail. Now we're going to begin row 5. We're working with color A now. That's what's on our hook. You can tighten everything up as best as you can, but I found it got quite loose until we made our tassels and everything tightened up. So to start row 5, we're going to chain 2 and turn. Working into the first chain 1 space, we're going to single crochet. We're going to repeat the following all the way across. Chain 1, and in the next chain 1 space, single crochet. Chain 1, in the next chain 1 space, single crochet. Chain 1, in the next chain 1 space, single crochet, and the last step in the row will be to chain 1 and into the final chain 2 space, single crochet. Now we're going to start row 6. Still with color A, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and turn our work. We're going to work into the first chain 1 space, into this first chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, in the next chain 1 space, single crochet, and repeat that all the way across. Chain 1, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, in the next chain 1 space, single crochet. And the last step in this row is to chain 1 and into the final space, which is a chain 2 space, single crochet and change colors. So we're going to have 2 loops on our hook. We drop color A, pick up color B, once again leave a 9-inch tail, put color B on your hook, and pull that yarn through the 2 loops of color A on your hook. Tighten everything up, and then fasten off color A, leaving a 9-inch tail. The rest of the pattern is repeating rows 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can repeat rows 3 to 6 until you reach the width that you'd like for the scarf. In the written instructions, I've indicated where I ended for both the regular size and for the large size. For both sizes, you will end after completing a row 6, which is the row that we just did. The only difference when you reach your desired width that you'd like for your scarf, when you complete your last row 6, the only difference is that you don't change colors. So you'll finish the pattern once you've reached your desired width by simply single crocheting in the last chain 2 space. But you don't change colors on that last stitch like you would in every other time you do a row 6. And then you will simply cut your yarn, leaving a 9-inch tail, and you're going to fasten off by pulling that yarn through that loop and pulling tight. And then now we can begin our tassels or our fringe, whatever you'd like to call them. To help you cut your tassels or the strands of yarn that you need for the tassels, you can find an 8-inch object and you can wrap your yarn around this 8-inch object. You wrap it around 1 time for each strand that you need. And the written instructions are going to indicate exactly how many strands you will need. So you're going to wrap it around a number of times and then simply cut down the middle. And that's a really easy way to make a number of strands really, really quickly. I attached the tassels to the scarf with the right side of the scarf facing me. The last row that we just completed was a wrong side row. So we just worked along the last row, the ending tail, the last tail that we just fastened off with is now on our left. What we should do is turn our work now, and this means the right side is now facing us. So your last ending tail should now be on the right. As for the number of strands that I used for each side, they were slightly different. For this first row here, you'll see 1 tail on each side. So I made a tassel of 3 strands for both sides, and I incorporated this 1 tail into that tassel. Let's do that together. So you're going to take 3 strands of yarn and fold them in the middle with a hook. Doesn't really matter what size. I'm going to use my eye hook here. We are going to, let's start on this side. We're going to insert our hook from the back to the front. We're going to place these tassels onto our hook, folded in the middle, and we're going to pull them through. Now you can drop your hook, and then I'm putting my fingers through the loop that we just made and pull all these tassels through the loop. I want you to see both sides here, okay? Now let's incorporate this starting tail. So simply with your fingers, grab that starting tail and then pull everything tight. Now on the other side, we do exactly the same. We get 3 strands of yarn, and we're still working on the first row here. Insert your hook into the middle of this color section here, and just find a good place for your hook to be inserted from back to front. Put your tassels on your hook and pull through. With your fingers, grab the ends, pull it through the loop, and then also with your fingers, just put your fingers through the loop and grab that tail so we can incorporate it into the tassel, and then pull tight. After all the tassels are attached, you may want to go and tighten everything up a little more. So that's what I did for row 1. Now on the side of your scarf where there's now going to be 2 tails for each color change that you made, For these tassels, I only used 2 strands because we are incorporating these 2 ends. So I attached tassels of 2 strands to the middle of each of the 2 rows of each color. For the other side, which doesn't have any tails, I made tassels of 3 strands for each of the 2 rows of each color. So go ahead and make tassels of 2 strands on the side with where there's 2 tails, and 3 strands for tassels on the other side. And I just made my tassels right into the middle. I attached them into the middle of each section of color. Once you have all your tassels attached, the last step is to trim your ends so that they're all the same size, and I have a great video on how exactly to do that. I'm going to link to that right now. And now you have a new moss stitch scarf. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed making this scarf. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to see your creations. I'm here if there is anything at all I can do to help. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.